Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Dion and today I am going to be analyzing and going through the Coquette aesthetic.
I learned how to make love from the movies. He found me waitressing out every Tuesday. She said I want to buy you up.
I really enjoy watching style analysis videos and just more conversational YouTube videos in general. So I decided to try a few out myself. I actually recorded one before this. I don't know which one's gonna go up first, but I do think they're really fun and I've done a couple of them in the past and I'm excited to get into this one. So before we get into it, please make sure you subscribe to my channel because I post videos every single Thursday. And with that, let's get into it.
I think that if you want love, you have to give love.
So the Coquette aesthetic is all about embracing girlhood in fun, bright, colorful ways. The Coquette aesthetic also combines mature luxe aesthetics with that young girly nymphette look. Coquette means being like flirty and just, you can't help yourself, you just flirt with everyone. Big Leo Libra energy. Sort of been around, especially with Lolita fashion, which has a totally different history. I'm not even gonna get into that. Coquette aesthetic has a lot of inspiration from the Regency and Victoria era, like chokers, pearls. We sort of saw a beginning rise of the Coquette aesthetic in the 2010s with pale grunge, soft pale grunge, kawaii, nymphette, Lolita fashion of the 2010s. If you are on Tumblr, you probably saw some of those. And Lolita style sort of originated in the 70s. That sort of took the childish bright colors that were popular in the 70s and mixed them with the like prairie dresses to make sort of a soft, hyper feminine look, matching the luxe aesthetic of opulence and ruffles and luxury with that girlish school look is like the perfect sort of Blair Waldorf, just classy, sexy, girly, super feminine. Something different from Coquette to Lolita or nymphette fashion is that even though it involves lace, hyper femininity, and short skirts, it doesn't have the same fetish wear that you would see in the pale grunge doing harnesses, leather chokers, and garter belts. Nor does it have the corsets or stays of the cottagecore Regency core aesthetic. So it's sort of is straying away a little bit from the lingerie aspect and focusing more on the dainty details. The queen of Coquette herself, Miss Lana Del Rey, revitalized the Lolita movement back in 2012-2014 with her Born to Die album and is the main inspiration for the subgenre of Coquette, Americana Coquette, focusing on the bright cherry reds, whereas women like Lily Rose Depp and Marina and the Diamonds subscribe more to the gloomy dollette look, looking like that broken, haunted doll with the hollowed out cheekbones, lots of cool tones, and emphasizing the little girl style. Anything that is girly and hyper feminine, that is what Coquette aesthetics are. Some tenets of Coquette fashion include the color pale pink. If there's one color in this aesthetic, it's going to be pale pink. Other complementary colors like ivory or cream or some nudes and black complement that color, but pale pink is the main color. Obviously, since it's hyper feminine, can't go wrong with a ballerina baby pink. Another complementary color would be a cherry red, especially if you're going for the Americana Coquette aesthetic. Because Coquette fashion has a lot of roots in ballerina and dancewear, it's no surprise that pale pink is a tenet of the aesthetic. The next tenet is mini skirts. Whereas cottagecore had long style dresses, midi dresses, the Coquette fashion is all about super mini skirts. There's nothing more youthful and classic than a pleated skirt, and not only does it give cutesy young vibes, but it also is incredibly flirty with a hint of sexy. Following along with mini skirts are tights and stockings. Given the 2010s resurgence that tights and stockings are definitely coming back, we've seen that all around with Gossip Girl being rebooted and everything. All those old looks are coming back, but instead of doing the colored block tights of the 2010s, the Coquette aesthetic opts for more textured, lacy tights. White tights, sweater tights, embroidered tights are all popular in this aesthetic. Rather than the old school color blocking, the tights stay pale and neutral. The only time you see black tights are typically when they're super lacy and dainty. This also really plays in the fact that Coquette style is based in kind of dancewear ballerina style, so the pale pink, mini skirts, and tights all make a lot of sense. The next crucial piece of Coquette fashion is dainty florals. From tiny rosettes to tiny floral patterns, this is everywhere in the aesthetic. you can't really be hyper feminine without having florals everywhere. The last Coquette tenet that I'm gonna go through is satins and silks. Once again, harkening back to dance wear, the satins and silks remind you of the ribbons of the ballet shoes. It also gives an air of sexiness considering it's typically a lingerie material, but it keeps with that girly youthfulness, especially in colors like pale pinks, ivories, pastel blues, and lavenders.
Come on, you know you like little girls.
Now, as much as I love this aesthetic, clearly I just randomly picked this out and I was like, oh, this matches perfectly. I do have a few issues with it. First off is that the Coquette aesthetic is all about hyperfemininity, and that kind of poses the question, what does it mean to be a girl? Is it all pinks and florals and hearts and ruffles and lace? Of course not. Womanhood, girlhood, gender expression can be whatever you want. And so even though Coquette defines itself as like very hyper feminine, very stereotypically girly, it is an aesthetic for everyone and everyone can adopt it. However, because it has all those stereotypes, you typically don't see a lot of other gender expressions. It's typically cis women. And of course, given that it's a trend directed more towards femmes and femme presenting folks, it still feels a little bit exclusionary because it's so all about what's being stereotypically girly, and if you don't fit that stereotype, it can feel sort of like, well, I don't look like all these models, but can I still participate in the aesthetic? And going off of that, even though the Coquette aesthetic seems to have way more BIPOC representation in the aesthetic, it's still predominantly skinny white girls. With the rise of the soft black girl over TikTok and Instagram, women of color, and especially black women who have been harshly and racially stereotyped for being over masculine, are deciding to reject that stereotype and lean into hyper femininity, and rejecting the idea that black women who act hyper feminine are acting white.
Interesting reaction.
Whiteness has no equation to classiness, girliness, womanhood, and I like that lots of women of color are starting to reject that, and I really feel that the soft black girl movement that sort of happened last summer had a heavy influence on the Coquette movement, and I'm really happy to see more and more representation in the Coquette movement. Even though Coquette is better than other aesthetics at being inclusive of other races, it still is 100% skinny girls, which is really upsetting because with designers like Silky, who are very size inclusive, you would reckon that the hyper feminine, soft, girly looks would apply to bigger women as well. But because Coquette is based in youthfulness and people synonymize youthfulness with being tiny, dainty, and skinny, you don't see any inspiration for plus size coquettes, and that's really upsetting because it's another stereotype that bigger women aren't as feminine, and that the most hyper feminine type of person, the most coquette person that can be, would be a skinny white woman. And so kind of hate that because that hyper femininity has been so common among women of color and plus size women. I think Coquette will have no other choice but to embrace all types of femmes in this aesthetic because they're the ones who have been building it up over the last year, and we love to see it. And I'm glad that they've been more at the forefront of Coquette aesthetics than other aesthetics. Again, it is super white and it's not very size inclusive. But that means that when we see Coquette creators that are plus size and are people of color, then we want to boost them and we want to give them a platform. Here are some of my favorite Coquette black creators. Another criticism I have of the aesthetic is that it does have a luxury aspect to it, which could be overall exclusive. It's sort of a minor critique because it's really easy to look expensive on a budget, and things like pearls and satins are all things that you can thrift. It does sort of give that like classy girls wear Chanel vibe, and it makes me a little bit afraid that we're gonna slip back into the days of like Pinterest where everyone had a Celine bag that was $20,000 and that was like the it look for bloggers in 2010. My last criticism I just want to touch on a little bit, and it's because Coquette does have roots in Nymphette and Lolita culture, which stems from sexualizing young girls. And even though I really like the hyper feminine aesthetic, I love wearing pigtails or two braids or acting super girly and youthful, there is sort of a grossness when there's such a sexualization around young girls' looks, and it also sort of perpetuates this idea that the girls in short skirts and dainty flower things are asking for it because it's sexy and they're an nymphet and blah blah blah. So it's just a little bit of like a gross thing. I know that's like a super complicated, there's so much about like Lolita fashion, and so I'll link some videos here, like go check those out. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but just something to sort of like about. So in terms of Coquette clothing, I would say the two biggest brands that I can think of would be For Love and Lemons and the brand that I just mentioned, Silky. Another brand you see a lot is Vivienne Westwood, especially with her Regency core looks and the classic Vivienne Westwood pearl choker. What I like about Silky is that it's super size inclusive, especially with their models and the influencers that they work with, and I think their looks are perfect for the coquette hyper feminine look. For Love and Lemons is a brand that I really like, however they run so small and they're not that size inclusive. I think they're getting better, but in terms of like Dainty Florals, lace, all that, nothing is more coquette than For Love and Lemons in my opinion. What I do like about this aesthetic and all aesthetics, because all fashion operates on the 20-year trend cycle, which means you'll be able to find it at a thrift store or on a secondhand shop, and finding coquettish things to thrift would be really easy. Try searching for things like nighties, old pearl jewelry, blazers, pink, cream, pastel sweaters, mini bags, florals, plaid skirts, chunky cardigans, and if you type in Coquette on Depop, a ton of things will come up as well. Alrighty, so I hope you guys liked sort of my first style analysis video. I feel like I've done videos like this in the past that are sort of similar and conversational, but I've only done like 2 or 3 because they kind of make me nervous, but I really enjoyed filming it. It definitely like fueled my like research brain to sort of get my act together. I couldn't really just throw on the camera like I normally do. I had to actually like think and write out a script. I have like a whole essay here, it's crazy. So if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it, and like share it with your friends if you see anybody talking about the coquette aesthetic. I haven't seen any other channel like Modern Girls or Mina Lay that I really admire do this aesthetic yet, so when I thought of doing it, I was like, oh my god, run now. And it's literally 10 o'clock at night. If you know me, I'm never up at 10, but I threw on makeup, I threw on my camera, I did all this research because I really wanted to get this video out before the other people did. So I feel really cool. I feel above the trend. I'm an insider, you guys. If you did like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I post videos every Thursday, and follow me on TikTok and Instagram because I post content there almost every single day. And with that, have a happy day. Bye.